So what I've got up here is the latest gimbal on the market, and if I didn't tell you what it is, then from a distance you might actually think this was the DJI Ronin-S, but you'd be wrong, because this in fact is the latest gimbal from Godsend called the Moza Air 2. If you've been following my website, then you know that I'm a huge fan of the previous gimbals, the Moza Air and Moza Air Cross. So this video is not going to be like a full-on review, it's just sort of my initial thoughts. And today I did tests with Ken, who's also a photographer and a filmmaker, and he happens to own the DJI Ronin-S. So I asked him to come out, and along with his 1DX Mark II DSLR camera, so that we could kind of test out that payload, you know, sort of having a bigger, heavier camera payload on this gimbal alongside the DJI Ronin-S, and kind of compare them in action. First we did these tests just kind of walking in towards this hanging bridge, and this is just your standard follow mode in the pan and pitch axes, just kind of walking through and, you know, trying to compose an interesting shot. And up here I also got the same shot just for comparison on the DJI Ronin-S, and the gimbal performs well, as you can see. After that I wanted to try this sort of a flashlight mode shot, so kind of being low to the ground, kind of almost mimicking like a really slow slider shot. What made a difference here is because I'm using a heavier camera and lens combo, it kind of makes it very difficult to hold this gimbal with all that weight extended at the end of it in flashlight mode, which means that my hands, you know, were shaking basically from holding it for too long like this. And I kind of wanted to see, is the gimbal going to be able to take out those little, you know, vibrations of my hands and still produce smooth shots. And here's the same shot I got, but now on the DJI Ronin-S. Another test I wanted to get up here was trying to walk with the gimbal backwards and kind of holding at my eye level. But what made it more difficult is that I was zoomed in all the way on 70mm. And trying to basically keep a nice sort of you know, framing on my front can here, and being able basically to walk with the gimbal. And on top of that I was walking on this bridge that, like I said, it's a hanging bridge, so the whole thing was kind of wobbling, and being able to compose the shots and, you know, getting good composition, but also so that the gimbal eliminates any of the kind of, you know, micro jitters or shakes from my hand. Or sometimes if I by mistake kind of, you know, rotated the gimbal again, as I was kind of struggling walking backwards on this hanging bridge. Now here's how the DJI Ronin-S performed in that same test, and as you'll notice, it's able to do the same things. And overall, as we were kind of testing these different shots here throughout the day with Ken, we realized that both gimbals, you know, Ken was obviously more comfortable using the DJI Ronin-S because that's what he has and that's what he uses daily. I was kind of learning how to use the, you know, the Moza Air 2, but there are some similarities to Moza Air 1, so I kind of was a little bit more familiar with the operation and kind of how the gimbal performs. So for me, maybe at times I found this one to be a bit easier, but at the end of the day, really, like, we both came to the conclusion that both gimbals can perform equally amazing smooth shots. It just really comes down to how you set up the settings in the gimbals. And both of the gimbals can be connected via Bluetooth, so to your phones. So, you know, using the phone apps, you can control the gimbals and pretty much change every aspect and every parameter in these gimbals. What I like, though, more, I guess I would say, about the Moza Air 2 is the fact that it's got this nice display here in the back, and this display, it shows basically everything, you know, all the information that you need, and it allows you to, by just pressing the menu button, you can navigate through all the menus, you can change all the parameters, all the settings about this gimbal right there very quickly by just navigating and using this roller. And in fact, the biggest thing I ended up doing was just kind of, while I was there on the field testing out, you know, the gimbals, was just changing the sensitivity, so that sometimes it was more responsive and sometimes it was less. And the great thing on the Moza Air 2 is that you just literally turn this little dial and you're able to change the sensitivity on all of the motors all at once. Now you can go in still and, like I said, individually adjust the motors and adjust the dead space on them and all that stuff. But if you just overall, let's say you want to make this very responsive, and let's say I'll put it up here to 60, and you'll notice the gimbal's nice and responsive. You know, going up and down, left and right. But if I want to suddenly make it very, very smooth, let's say put it to 5, and you'll notice now I could be moving really fast, but the gimbal's nice and smooth. You know, it's not going to be, if you make a quick mistake or something like that, it's not going to respond. You know, and then again, you can put it somewhere in between, right? So very quickly it allows you to kind of adjust the sensitivity of this gimbal so that you can get the shot that you need to get. Here's the shot that Ken was getting, where he was kind of running low, on the ground, and then basically going from low mode all the way up to basically his eye level. And so what he was doing is he was at first starting out, with the trigger engaged. By the way, when you pull the trigger up here, it's the same as the DJI Ronin-S. It basically just locks all of the axes, so none of the gimbal basically won't respond. But then when you let go of it, suddenly the gimbal starts following again. So with this, it allowed them to, again, just put the camera really low to the ground, not worry that it's going to be following or pointing in the wrong direction. And then once he brought the camera up to his, eye level, he would just let go of the trigger, and then he was in follow mode. And as you can see, both on the, Moza Air 2, as well as on the DJI Ronin, again, both gimbals perform very well. Another shot we wanted to test out is the running, and again, we didn't really have much time. We just literally did these tests just one time with each gimbal, and so because of that, I would say I really want to do a more sort of an in-depth review and further tests with this gimbal, and even also with the DJI Ronin-S, because really when it comes to running shots, you really want to fine-tune the gimbal sensitivity. So in this case, we just had it on the kind of default settings that you get, the factory settings. And this is how the gimbals both performed when running. So the first shot here is the Moza Air 2. This is how it looks. And here's the second shot now with the DJI Ronin-S. Here's another interesting shot that Ken was getting, which was in the flashlight mode, and then he would slowly kind of crane up. And then as he cranes up, he would disengage the trigger so that suddenly he was in full follow mode. So he could, pan and tilt the camera and kind of compose his shots. So this is on the Moza Air 2, and as you can see, it transitions nice and smooth. And this shot here is on the DJI Ronin-S. And as you'll notice, the second you let go of the trigger, the gimbal will kind of glitch a little bit, unless you happen to be holding it perfectly centered. Another shot he was testing is kind of walking with the gimbal kind of tilted sideways while it's sort of flowing and kind of gliding over the railing of this bridge. And this is how it looks on the Moza Air 2. And now here's the same shot on the DJI Ronin-S. After having done these tests actually a few times, both I and Ken kind of realized that, again, you kind of have to really go in and tweak each gimbal to kind of the settings that you prefer. Both of the gimbals can operate in what's called as the Inception Mode, or that's what it's known as right now. And Moza, actually, there's many people out there who think that DJI Ronin was the first one with that option, and that all the other gimbals, manufacturers afterwards copied them. But actually, in fact, Moza with their Moza Air Cross was the first one who had that mode, and afterwards there was another actually smaller gimbal company that had that mode, and then DJI Ronin, when they released their, DJI Ronin-S had that mode in there. So they weren't actually the first ones. But anyways, with this one, yes, you can also perform the Inception Mode, meaning where the camera is going to be kind of endlessly rotating in the roll axis. It's very simple to access that. Just double press this. As you can see, the gimbal is going to basically point the camera up in the roll axis. So you can walk around like this. We actually did get one shot like that, just kind of looking up at these trees. And then you just, with the joystick here, you can basically have the camera roll endlessly on the roll axis, like I said. And if you look at both of these shots here, first one here looking up, this is on the Moza Air. Yeah, it works really nicely. And then here's the same shot on the DJI Ronin-S. Now the problem we had on the DJI Ronin-S is that you can perform the Inception Mode when you're kind of pointing forward, but the second you pointed the camera up, it did not want to work. So can you actually enable it so you can have the camera pointing up and still, working in Inception Mode? I don't know. I thought you could have, but we couldn't figure out. We didn't know how to do it. And Ken, even though, again, he's got a lot of experience with that gimbal, he, again, couldn't do that. So the only way he could do that shot then is he had to actually physically be in roll follow mode, and then just had to be basically rotating himself with the gimbal. So it's not ideal. Now when we're walking sort of forward with the gimbal kind of pointing ahead of us, then he could perform the Inception Mode on the DJI Ronin-S. And this is how it looks. And here's the same shot, but now on the Moza Air 2. So what do I think of this gimbal? I mean, it's got a lot of really cool features, and for the price, I don't think really you can beat it. It's $599 right now, so cheaper than the DJI Ronin-S. And it's, you know, very similar, actually offers a larger payload that it can take, which is 4.2 kilograms, which is really nice. Means you can, again, put a bigger camera lens combo on there. It comes with all the camera control cables. You have power out up here to power your other accessories, things like that. It works with Sony, Panasonic, and Canon cameras. Pretty much all the cameras out there, you know, when it comes to those brands. And you can actually control various things on these cameras. You can obviously start and stop them. You can even, on some of the cameras, control, you have like right here, direct access on these buttons. So you can control, for example, the shutter, your aperture, your ISO, things like that. You can also control, using the roller up here, you can control the focus with certain of these electronic lenses. You can also, if you wanted to, because you can kind of change the settings in there again very easily because of the LCD display on the back. And you can, for example, use it like I have right now, where with that, you know, roller, I can control my roll axis. So it's kind of cool because I can still be sort of in a regular follow mode where it's locked off in the roll. But if I ever want to, then I can engage it, you know, and I can make the camera roll. Now, obviously, this roller is meant mainly for adjusting focus. So like I said, you can do it with certain electronic lenses, but if you're working with cine lenses, then Moza also gives you their follow focus here motor, which is actually, you know, wirelessly transmits the signal, because it will actually work. You can control this actually through the smartphone app, or you can control it through their dedicated follow focus transmitter. And anyways, you mount it up here on the front. They give you all the accessories, like I said, all the cables plus the 50mm rails. So you can mount it up here, and you can then, using this roller or your smartphone or the dedicated follow focus system, you can control then the focus or the zoom on your cine style lenses. Or if you have a lens, let's say that's not cine style, but you still want to be able to control the focus on it, and they even give you the little here gear that you can wrap around your lens, and you can control the focus that way. So again, the gimbal comes with a lot of cool accessories. You know, now you can see they adapted the DJI Ronin-S design, where they have the slanted roll motor, so you have direct, you know, view basically of the monitor here on the back of your camera. So if you know, if that's something that you want, that's really cool. Another thing I really like is the fact that they give you this sort of a built-in plate. What this is great is that you still can adjust, obviously, the camera position here, you know, going forward and backwards, but on top of that, they add this plate, which is, by the way, a Manfrotto compatible plate. And with that, you just release this, and you have this safety here pins, and that allows you to basically take the camera out. So let's say if you want to take the camera out for whatever reason, let's say you want to get to the battery or switch the, you know, the card in there, you can do that. And then when you put it back in, it will lock itself in. It has these two pins, so it will always come back to the same spot. You can just tighten it up here, and then again, you basically have your camera in there, but you don't have to rebalance it, because to change the position of the camera forward and back, you actually release this knob, and you have a separate plate there on the bottom. So that's actually, I think, a really cool design. Now, like I said, when you're working with a camera like the Sony a6500, you're probably going to be swearing your head off whenever you're working with most gimbals, because your battery is going to be, you know, dying very quickly, and then you're going to have to take the camera out, switch the battery, and all that nonsense. Well, again, with this gimbal, the cool thing is that using their control cable, you can actually power and control the camera at the same time. So you don't have to worry about that stuff. You can basically, you know, right now, in fact, my battery is dead in the camera, but I'm powering it through the batteries in the gimbal. Another thing I like about this gimbal is actually the batteries. The battery life is somewhere between 8 to 14 hours. Obviously, it's going to depend on how big of a payload you have and how you're using the gimbal. But what's really cool about it is that the batteries are here in the grip like the DJI Ronin-S, but you actually can take out the batteries. And if you notice, they're your you know, most common and very easy to find 18650 batteries, the lithium-ion batteries. So you can buy a lot of these. The gimbal does come with 4 of these and a charger, but again, you can just buy a lot of these batteries. You can find them on Amazon, eBay. I also like the fact that they have this little locking mechanism here on the roll axis. So when you're balancing it, this is a lifesaver, because you basically just engage it here and then will lack on the roll axis, and also when you're transporting, let's say if you're walking around with it, means that this won't be swinging around on you. So it makes it easier for transporting it, or when you're balancing the gimbal, because this way you can just worry about balancing, let's say the pitch axis, and then you can unlock this, and then you can adjust your roll axis. Now, when you're going down, sort of further down in the design, I noticed that Moza kind of maybe went a little bit cheap on some of the materials. So the one thing, and this is really the only thing I don't like about the gimbal so far, is just like the front of it here is solid, but the back of this here design of the gimbal is made out of just this plastic that feels a little cheap. So like even if I, for example, just grab it, I don't know if you can hear it on the microphone. When I squeeze it, the whole plastic kind of moves and just creates a little sound and feels a little flimsy. And then the same thing if I grab it. And it's just this back part, like this basically section here, this plastic. This here, the back of it is solid. Now the handle itself, it has a non-slip here, but that, I don't know, I felt like the one on the DJI Ronin-S was a little bit better. That material was just a little bit more grippy. Now the tripod itself, again, just like on the DJI Ronin-S, converts into an extended grip, and this is really good actually. It's the same kind of material as on the DJI Ronin-S, so that I like. It's just maybe here, this material, and I almost wish maybe they put a bit of that material on the back here on the grip. So minor things so far, but those are little things that I just noticed. But otherwise the gimbal, is pretty impressive so far. So I'm gonna continue testing this. I'm gonna upload a full-on kind of review for you guys soon, so stay tuned for that, and also with hopefully a lot more cool, more exciting example shots for you guys to watch. Plus, I'm also gonna test this out with multiple other cameras, like for example the new Blackmagic design Pocket Cinema 4K camera. Maybe even I'll put on something really big, like a cinema camera, see how it works, since it can take, like I said, up to 4.2 kilograms. Anyways, my name is Tom Antos. If you guys like this video, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button and all that cool stuff. And also, if you want to stay tuned and be notified of the future videos, whether it's the review of this gimbal or some of the other videos that I do, then go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter, which is at tomantosfilms.com, or just follow the links in the description of this video. Anyways, that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.